your time is up. You are always creating a new normal, because once you reach a new level, that new level becomes your comfort zone. And so in order to elevate, you got to create your new normal again. Welcome to the third quarter. Nope, we're not called that anymore, guys. Sorry. Brand change, rebrand. Pew, pew, pew. Pew, 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 pew. Welcome to the New Normal Show. I am your host, Ace, and man, it feels weird. It feels great. It feels amazing. I'm a little nervous. I'm a little scared. I haven't done this in a while, but I'm beyond blessed to be able to bring you the New Normal Show podcast, once called the third quarter. And in this episode, I will explain why the name change and why I was on a 2-month sabbatical. And, but yeah, it feels good to be back, and it feels good to be back in this way and in this space. And I'll explain a little bit more later. But before I get into what this episode is going to be about, which is why did I change the name? Why did I believe that it was necessary to rebrand the podcast? And also, what are the 5 things, or what have been the 5 things that I've learned while being on a 2-month sabbatical from the podcast? But before we get into that, I just have to say, if you are an OG 3QP, third quarter podcast member, and you've been rocking with us since March of this year, I have read so many of your DMs, and I've gotten so many of your messages asking, when is the podcast coming back? Is it coming back? Why are you gone? I need you, Ace. Where have you been my whole life? Oh, my life. If you know what that's from, you're a real one. I want to say thank you for your support. I want to say thank you for just your care. And it's so... Honestly, it's such a big blessing to see how much of an impact we had in a short period of time. I believe we did 40 plus episodes from March, the middle of March to the end of August. We pretty much had 2 episodes a week throughout that period of time. And to see how much impact we had and how much value we added, which is all we wanted to do. But, you know, when you're missing for 2 months and people have been leaning on your content and your words and what you do, I can understand the frustration and the curiosity. So I'm going to explain in a little bit why I took a 2-month sabbatical from recording podcasts, amongst other things, and why the name changed. But before I get into that, I wanted to make sure that I personally thanked all the OG 3QPs for your support, for your love, your prayers, and just the value that you brought, because, you know, all we do is record and we post it, you know, and promote it. But you guys share it. You guys share and spread the word. And you guys have been a huge, huge part of our podcast. You know, it became a top 100 podcast very, very quickly. And it's because of you. So I want to say thank you. And if you're listening to this and this is your first time ever listening to this podcast, and you're coming in as it is known as the New Normal Show, I want to say welcome. And, you know, if you are someone that is wanting to shed old skin and step into new skin and embrace a version of yourself that you always knew existed, and you want to stand firm in that and step into that and create a new normal for yourself in your relationships, in your health and wellness, in your person, just you, period, then you've come to the right place. And I'm glad to have you. And I hope this episode is a great introduction of what is to come. I really do believe that the best podcasts are ahead of us, even though the last season was great and we got our feet wet and we kind of figured out our lane and stuff like that. But now I believe now that I rebranded it to something that I feel more aligned to, the sky's the limit. So welcome. And if you're not someone that wants to create a new normal, maybe this is not for you, you know, because, you know, this is for people that really want to shed old skin, step into new one, and recreate a new normal for themselves, that we're no longer going to be who we used to be, but we're going to step into fully and trust that who we're meant to be is truly a thing and a tangible asset you can have. So without further ado, let's get into it. And if this episode blesses you, don't forget to share, to subscribe, to follow. I'm going to be rusty with that because I haven't done this in 2 months. So as the episodes go on, I'm going to remember to do all that stuff. But that's not really the most important part. The important part is that we're back. We're back. We're back, man. We're back. And I want to get into why the sabbatical. Why did I take 2 months away? And why did I change the name from the Third Quarter Podcast to the New Normal Show? And first of all, the sabbatical. I felt around June-ish, I would say, like the beginning of summer, I felt like with the podcast, and I talked about this with my producer, Kyle, I was starting to feel a little disconnected with the show. And it wasn't that I wasn't enjoying doing the podcast. I absolutely love this. I love this. This is literally my jam. Jam. This is my jam. Shout out to G-Unit. This is my jam. I love this. I love that I can do this wherever I'm at. All I need is my little bit of equipment and my time, and I can get this going. I love it. I love what it's about. I love the people that I can reach. I love that I'm exercising my gift in this way. So I love it. So it was nothing about the podcast that I wasn't feeling aligned to in terms of recording the podcast. I wasn't feeling aligned with the title, and I wasn't feeling aligned with the subject matter per se. And here's why. When we first decided to do this podcast, Kyle and I was feeling like it was time for me to do a podcast. One, because I always wanted to do it. And now I felt like I had something to say. And with that being said, when I decided to create the podcast, I was still in the middle to end of my fitness transformation journey. Okay. So at the time when I decided to record this, it was like March. I think we actually started recording in February, but we released the pod in March. And at that time, so for those of you that are new, let me just start with this. This time last year, in 2023, I was about 270 pounds, okay? And now at the time of this recording, I'm about 198. So I've lost over 70 pounds in the past year. When I recorded this podcast in February, I was hovering around between 220, 230, like in that middle ground. And so I was still like going through my journey. So I had something to say, but I was still going through the transformation physically. Now, we all know that you're not just going through a transformation physically, you're also going through one mentally and emotionally and spiritually. So I was still going through it. And so as time went on, we go to February, we go to March, April, and all the way to June, I started to feel like I was creating content or recording episodes that were doing two things. One, I was creating episodes to fit what the title was. Okay, so the title was called The Third Quarter. And the reason why it was called The Third Quarter, because Kyle and I were playing basketball and we were talking about like halftime of life, right? Like, what does halftime mean in sports? Well, halftime means you play a first half, you have the home team and the away team, right? There's the score. So let's say the score is, 45-60 at halftime. And each team goes to their respective locker rooms for about 20 minutes. Now, it is in this halftime where you're doing a couple of things. Number one, you're resting, right? So you have 20 minutes where you're sitting down, not doing anything. So you get to catch your breath, rehydrate, stretch, to kind of recuperate from the first half of play. Another thing that's going on is there's a rehash or a recap of the first half. So you have film, you are going over what went well, what did not go well, your offensive assignments, your defensive assignments. So you're kind of going over what just happened. And if there are any adjustments that need to be made, what needs to happen in the second half to ensure victory. So that's basically what halftime is. It's a recalibration of what you've already done. So from a metaphor standpoint, halftime in life is not necessarily the halfway point of your age. It really kind of represents a point of your life where it's time to self-assess where you've been so you can start take action on where you want to be. And that's where the third quarter comes in, because in the third quarter, I have a basketball background. In the third quarter, that is the declaration of where this game is going to go. The third quarter usually is the quarter where the games are won or lost. So you've assessed yourself at halftime. You know what you need to do. Now, are you going to do it? Are you going to execute? Are you going to be a person of your word? Are you going to work harder? Are you going to work smarter? Are you going to do the things that we've drawn up at halftime? We know the game plan. Are you going to go out and execute it? Right? So the third quarter really sets the tone of where the rest of this game is going to go. Hence, that's why we call the podcast the third quarter. The third quarter was basically, what is your third quarter moment? What is it? What is the moment when you decided that enough is enough and it's time to change? And at the time, it made complete sense to me and to Kyle. Kyle loved the title, and I did too. But as I'm making these episodes and I'm recording them, I started to feel more and more disconnected to the title, and I felt like I was making content to make sense with the title. And now I felt like I wasn't creating from a place of where I'm at, but I was trying to create based on what the show was. And so I was feeling disconnected to what I was doing. So that's number one. The sabbatical was really about me removing myself from what I was doing and getting a better understanding and clarity on what was it now. Was it always that way? Should I have done the third quarter? What was I supposed to be doing now? Because I don't feel aligned to it. And if you know me and if you follow me on social media, the number one thing I'm talking about is alignment. It's not working harder. It's not grinding. It's not any of that. It's, are you aligned in what you're doing? Are you aligned in your body? Are you aligned in your relationships? Are you aligned in your business? Because if you seek alignment, hardships, which are inevitable, they're going to be easier for you to knock down and to go through, because if it's in your alignment, you know you have everything you need to withstand that storm. And I was not feeling aligned to the third quarter title of the podcast. That's number one. Number two, I felt like my message, right, was also not in alignment to the podcast. And I felt like there was more to me that I wanted to talk about, that how the podcast started was not really going to make sense. And so the sabbatical was really about, what do I have to say now? And who am I speaking to? Right? And oftentimes when you listen to podcasts or when you watch people's social media, which I don't do as much anymore because that was another thing, is I was consuming so much content that I felt like I was losing my voice, right? Like, how many times do we have all these different people in our ear because we're starting something new, so we feel like we need to listen and watch the experts, but forgetting the fact that our voice is the thing that we need to set free. Like, it's not really about getting more information. It's really about unlearning the things and just letting yourself be free in what it is that you do extremely well. And so with all that being said, I knew I needed to take a break, and I had some trips going on. I had some things I needed to do. So it was kind of like this perfect storm, right? Like, I was going to be gone for about 4 weeks, and I got traveling, still a lot of traveling coming up. So it was almost like the perfect storm and the perfect timing for me to take a break. Now, if there's one thing I would have done differently, and I want to be perfectly clear, and I'm going to get into the 5 things that I learned, right? But I want to paint the picture to you, the OGs and the newbies, where this podcast is now and why it's here and where it's going from here. If there was one thing I would have done differently, is I would have made an episode announcing that we were going to be on a sabbatical. Because to be fair, I didn't know I was going to be on a sabbatical. Okay. I knew I probably wasn't going to have a podcast released after the podcast that the last podcast that I put out. I didn't know I was going to be gone for 2 months. So to be fair, I didn't know I was going to be on a sabbatical. A sabbatical, this was something I didn't intend to do. It kind of just happened. However, I still should have released something stating that the podcast is going to be on a break for a few months or a month or whatever. Okay. So that's my fault. So I apologize for that because that's not fair to you, the listener and the consumer. Okay. So the sabbatical was really about me hearing my own voice again and letting go of the reasons why I started and what I talked about and all those things and getting more clear, not necessarily knowing the end, but knowing in this particular season of where I'm at, what should I be talking about and who am I talking to? And the term new normal was always there, was always lingering around. And I just loved it. I love the idea of new normal, right? Like you're creating your new normality. The things that used to be normal for you, it used to be comfortable for you. It used to be the things that you always did. You're creating something new. You're chasing new dreams, new obstacles, new ways of being. You're transforming yourself. So now the transformed you is now your new normal. And guess what? When you get to that place, you have to recreate your new normal again. So the new normal is really like this evolution that does not end until your time is up. You are always creating a new normal because once you reach a new level, that new level becomes your comfort zone. And so in order to elevate, you got to create your new normal again, right? And so that was the biggest reason why I changed the title, was because I felt like the third quarter was very finite, meaning what was your third quarter moment? And then once that moment is over, it's like, then it's over. It was like the third quarter felt like a specific time that once you lived it, you're past it. The new normal feels to me like this is an everlasting thing that will never go away. You are always going to have to, if you want to live a life of evolution and growth and you want to become all that God's called you to be and this, that, and the third, you are always going to have to create a new normal. Because once you break through, the breakthrough eventually becomes your new comfort zone. The thing that used to be challenging now becomes easy. And so in order to grow, you got to go through another new normal again. And so that is why the show now is called The New Normal Show. Creating your new normal from a physical standpoint in terms of your health and wellness, your relationships, your personal skills, you as a being, your business, whatever the case is, creating what is your new normal, right? What have you always done that has set you back or gotten in the way or has tripped you up? And you're saying, you know what? Enough is enough. I'm going to recreate myself and I'm going to create my new normal. Like I'm no longer living this way. I'm no longer believing this way. I'm going over here now. And not only am I going to create this new normal, I'm going to stand so firm into this that this becomes my identity now. Because at the end of the day, it's really all about your identity. Where you are right now is a true manifestation of how you identify yourself as. Like me going from 270 pounds to 198 had nothing to do necessarily with the workouts and the eating and all that stuff, even though that was a piece to the puzzle. But there is no way in hell I could go from 270 to 198 while still believing and being the same person. Let's be perfectly clear. This was about changing my identity. I had to recreate my new normal. So the things that I used to do had to end. I had to create a new normality for myself, a new comfort zone. I had to completely shed my old skin and embrace this new one. And so when you think about the challenges we have in our lives, the things that require the most growth, at least for me in my life, it involved me shedding old skin in some kind of area to step into some new one. Because the person that you are now, right, is not going to be able to sustain where you're going. You can get there, like you can sniff it, you can sniff it, but you're not going to be able to keep it. And so in order to keep where you're going, and not just keep it, but elevate it, you're going to have to recreate yourself. You cannot look at yourself as the same. Like, I can't go to college as a kindergartner, right? Like, it's this, I'm still like, my birth certificate, my first, middle, and last name is the same parents, same home address, right? But I had to become a new person. I like, my 18-year-old self is not the same as my 5-year-old self, even though my name is the same. My information is the same, but my person is different. My body is different. My maturity is different. You understand what I'm saying? So when you look at it from that point of view, your elevation in life really depends on your identity. So that is why this podcast is called The New Normal. The New Normal show is about recreating your identity and changing and shedding the things that no longer serve you and stepping into the things that are. So that's why this show is called The New Normal Show. That is why the podcast is on a sabbatical for 2 months. And again, I apologize. I could have handled that better. But that's where we are right now. So if all of that in this last 20 minutes sounds great to you, and if you're still listening, thank you so much. But if you're liking this, if it's speaking to you, if it's connecting with you, then buckle up, baby, because we're going to have some fun. Okay? Now, you understand why the podcast is on sabbatical. You know why the name has changed. Now let's get into the 5 things that I have learned. I'm going to run through these really quickly, but the 5 things that I have learned while being on a sabbatical from the podcast. And the first thing that I have learned is sometimes in order to go far, you must go slow. Okay. Now it's like Ace is about to preach here. Okay. So for me, I was always someone that I would start something 100 miles an hour and running. But I also was someone that couldn't sustain that pace for an extended period of time. Thus, one of the reasons why it led to my burnout in 2023 was because I had too many irons in the fire and I had too many things that I was doing at 100 miles an hour that I just could not sustain that lifestyle. I just couldn't sustain it. And so what happens oftentimes, at least it did for me, is that your health comes at the expense of your success, right? So my health was at a decline at the expense of my success in my business and my social media and what I was doing, within my business and helping build my church youth ministry and growing my social media to over 1 million people in my community and all these things. My health was suffering at the expense of that. So because I had so much going on and I was trying to do everything now, especially coming through COVID, I just set myself up for failure. And one of the biggest things that I learned over the last 2 months is that sometimes if you want to go far, you must go slow. Now, here's why I came to this conclusion. So I picked up running. Okay. So in these last 2 months, I started running. Everybody's running now. Okay. Now, they probably always were running, but for some reason, I'm just noticing people running more, right? And it's dope. It's great. It's free and it's non-judgmental and it's great, right? I'm here for the running, right? But because I was noticing people running more, I was like, man, maybe I should start running again. Now, I used to run a lot for basketball and all that stuff, but when I was heavier at 270, I didn't really feel secure in my body to run, if I'm being honest. Now I'm just like, I'm taking my shirt off. You know what I'm saying? Y'all about to get these abs, So I started running. And when I started running, meaning I was taking off, but I was gassing out. And I'm like, yo, I'm 198. Why am I gassing like this? Why am I I'm lean? Why am I gassing? I'm gassing because I haven't ran in a long time. Like, it takes a while to build that kind of endurance for that kind of activity. And so one day I was running, and I think I did a 3-miler. And like, I started and stopped a handful of times, and then it just hit me. It was just like, yo, the reason why you keep starting and stopping is not necessarily about your endurance. It's about your pace. You're going at a pace that you cannot sustain. Now, that does not mean that at some point in time, you won't be able to pick your pace up, but you have to build yourself to that pace. And so it's better to start slow and maintain that slower pace for the entire 3 miles than to go as hard as you can and stop. Because here's the thing. When you're going as hard as you can and you stop, you completely stop. Like, you're not moving. You're catching your breath. You're doing the, you sound like a donkey, right? Like, you catching your breath. You put your hands behind your head. Like, you stop. But when you're going at a slower pace and you slow down, you don't necessarily come to a full stop. You just slow your pace. What does that mean? Even though you slow down, you're still moving forward. And so what I learned on the sabbatical is that to go far, in some cases, is better to go slow, because it's not necessarily about how fast you get started, right? It's about how long you can keep this pace. And so a sprinter is going to get from point A to point B faster than a marathon runner. But a marathon runner is going to get from point A to point Z faster than a sprinter. And this is a long game. Don't be so caught up in trying to get from A to B because A to B is sexy. Focus on getting from A to Z because most people aren't willing to last that long, okay? The first thing that I learned on my sabbatical is, in some cases, it's better to go slow than it is to go fast. So if you want to go far, go slow, okay? Here's the second thing. Follow your own voice. Follow your voice. Now, I believe God has called you and me for assignments and things that He has designed us uniquely to do. That's what I believe, all right? However, if you are so consumed in what everyone else is doing and what everyone else is saying, it is going to drown that voice out. And you're going to start to sound, move, talk, do things like the people whom you're consuming, and you're no longer following that voice that's inside of you. So when you're struggling following your instinct or following, your heart, or listening to what I call it, the Holy Spirit is telling you to do, oftentimes that's coming from a place of you got too many people in your ear and you've consumed way too much content to the point where your authenticity is being sacrificed. So follow your voice in all of its weirdness and in the uncertainty and the not knowing of what's going to happen down the road. It's yours. I don't have any competition. If I follow my voice, I don't have any competition. The only way I'm competing is if I'm not following my own voice. Because when you follow what God has put into you, you automatically win. And not just win, you win royally. Because it's for you. There's a message, there's a business, there's a book, there's a school, there's something inside of you that only you can do the way that you're designed to do it. So stop reading other people's books, listening to podcasts, watching YouTube videos, trying to get inspiration. But in reality, what's really happening is you're afraid to follow your own voice because you're not sure of where it's going to end up because you haven't followed it before. Remember, God designed you to flow. So when you get in the current of your calling, no matter what's in front of you, it's always going to lead you through it. So even if you crash into rocks, the current is still going to guide you forward. Okay? So the second thing I learned over these last 2 months is to follow your own voice. All right? The third thing is this. Relaxation is the ultimate resilience. I'm going to say that again. Relaxation is the ultimate resilience, meaning the number one thing that I believe most people do not do, and when I say most, I'm going to say me, and I'm assuming I'm not the only one, is we operate way too much in fight or flight. And here's the thing. We've been operating so much in fight or flight that we don't even realize it anymore, and it feels like peace. Like when someone's in a dysfunctional relationship, it's now peaceful for them because it's familiar. It's their new normal, right? Some of y'all are going the new normal the other way. I want you to go the other way. You going the other way, right? Like to the point where when you separate from that person, okay, peace does not feel normal. It actually feels like chaos. So the key to being in a healthy relationship, the key to being in a career path that's for you, the key to getting in a healthy body is to do it as relaxed as possible. Because when you're relaxed, you're open. When you're not relaxed, it's like walking through life with your fists clenched and expecting someone to give you something, not realizing even if they gave it to you, you can't hold on to it because you're too tense. There are probably opportunities and people and things that have crossed your path that are for you or that can help you or serve you, or you can help them and serve them, that you are unaware that they exist because you're in fight or flight. You're focused so much on problems. You're focused so much on, I got to make this work. I got to make this work. I got to make this work, that you're only looking in one direction and you're not relaxed. See, when you are relaxed, you're open for outcomes, right? So you know what you want, but you're open to how you get there. Because if you're only focused on doing it one way, that means if it works out, you're only going to give yourself credit. But when you're open to possibilities of how you're going to get the outcome, you now allow God to do his thing, and so you can give him the glory. So a part of relaxing is working towards your dreams or desires or goals, but submitting the timeline and the outcome. And when you are relaxed in your process, that it makes you the most resilient. You become like water, like Bruce Lee said, water becomes the cup. It becomes whatever it's in. It's water. It flows. So when you're relaxed, you flow like water. You flow, right? So the third thing is relaxation is the ultimate resilience. The fourth thing, and this is obvious, but I'm going to say it anyway, is like your health is wealth. Like there's no other way I can say that or spin it or make it sound dope or interesting. The hell with that. Your health is wealth. Like take care of your body. Take care of it. 30 minutes a day, move your body by any means necessary. Move your body. I don't care if it's basketball, if it's yoga, if it's Pilates. Like I took Pilates 3 times, I think, when I was in LA recently, and I loved it. Never done it before. I was on the reformer. Shout out to the reformer. And my glutes were gluten. Okay. My glutes was gluten. And is it as strenuous as, an F45 class? In some ways, yes. In some ways, no. Right? Is it as strenuous as playing a game of basketball? In some ways, yes. In some ways, no. But the point is that it's something. It's movement. It's challenging. It's fun, right? Find something that you can do for 30 minutes a day. I don't care if it's walking every single day. Move your body. I'm not asking you to get a trainer. I'm not asking you to hire me as your coach. I'm not asking you to do anything other than to move your body. That's it. And be mindful of the food that you're eating. Bro, sis, listen to me. I was 270 pounds at 30+% body fat last year. A year ago. I am now in the 190s in the teens, low teens body fat percentage. And it literally happened because I started just moving my body every day for 30 minutes and being mindful of what I ate. Did I still go out to eat? Yes. But here's the thing. It gave me the ability to remove guilt and shame from what I was doing. This is about building a healthy relationship with you. This is your new normal now. And a part of that is you have to really give yourself grace. If you're someone like me and you let yourself go, like the most important word that you're going to be able, or you're going to have to hold on to is grace. But the bottom line is your health is wealth, man. Like you have got to take care of yourself. I'm not saying you got to be like me and lose 72 pounds unless you feel like you should. I'm not saying you got to have abs. I'm not saying you got to run a marathon. I'm saying be healthy. And you know what that means. You don't need to research anything. Just do the opposite of what you're doing. Like it's not hard. Just move your body, man. Like walk. And I promise you, if you commit to walking 30 minutes every day and eat out one time less a week, cook a little more, have protein focused meals, get your vegetables and your fruits in. Like if you just do that for 4 to 6 weeks, you're going to feel and look different. I promise you, you're going to get better sleep. You're going to have better focus. You're going to have more energy. You're going to be more vibrant. And then that momentum is going to carry you into doing other things. But the bottom line is take care of your damn self. All right? Because we need you. We need you here. Your family needs you. Your calling needs you. God needs you. I need you. We need you. And we need you to be your best. All right? The last thing, number 5, and this is the most important thing on this list. And that is God is the greatest. God is the greatest. And I don't know where you are in your faith walk. I'm a believer. I am a Jesus man through and through. And for me, my relationship with God is the most important thing that I have. But when you actually take time to build relationship, when you take time to have time, when you make time for him and you start to hear his voice and you guys got a conversation going, like there's nothing like it. There's nothing like it. And the biggest thing I will say why a relationship with God is so important is because if you do it right, and not like there's a right way or a wrong way, meaning when you actually are in communion with him, there's a part of you that just wants to start letting go. Like I am the king of, people pleasing and like wanting to control everything. That's just how I was as a kid. I was uptight. I was a nervous, scared, anxious kid. And you couldn't tell from the outside, but the inside, dude, fight or flight. And when you build a relationship with him and you allow him to carry some of the things that you're carrying, and when you submit it to his feet and you just say, you know what, I'm going to focus on what I can control and let go of the rest, life just gets better. Even when the challenges aren't removed, how you approach challenges, how you perceive challenges are just different, man. Like God is really the greatest. If you don't believe, I'm not going to convince you. Like this is not this podcast. I'm not going to be like, you need. I'm just sharing my life and my experience with having a relationship with God versus not is night and day. And I hope that the way that I live my life and what you see, you can see that. And taking a sabbatical is one, because I could have been like, I got to make a pod, I got to make a pod, I got to make a pod. I was like, nah, like I need to take a break. Like that right there showed me spiritually that I'm on the right path, that I felt like I needed to remove myself, because the old me would have kept going and I would have burnt out. The quality would have been bad. Like it just wouldn't have been good. And so me taking a sabbatical was a win for me, because I chose me and I chose purpose over performance. So if you're listening to this and you are someone that you are a control freak, like you got to know the answer for everything and you are wanting to take on everything on your own, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm not saying you got to do this. I'm not saying buy a Bible. I'm not telling you read it. I'm just sharing with you as someone that has worn those shoes. Listen to me clear. The one thing that saved my life was letting God lead my life. That's it. Whatever happens through that and after that is going to look different for me and you. But for me, when I submitted the things that I could not control, and I just took my time and attention to focus on me and what I was called to do in the season of my life, the freedom, the relaxation, the clarity, the removal of things that did not serve me just organically started to happen. And when you allow God to be God, man, your life gets so much better. That's my experience. Okay? That's my experience. I'm not going to say you got to do this or else. I'm never going to tell you what you should do. I'm only going to share what has worked for me and what has worked for other people that I help and that I know. But for me, the fifth thing on this list, but it's the most important thing on this list, is let God in. And when you do that, I promise you, life just gets better. Even in the storms, you have peace. You're not waiting for things to change to have peace. You have peace while things aren't changing yet. And that is the ultimate superpower. So, with that being said, this is 40 minutes of time you cannot get back, but I hope it was valuable. And I hope that this rebrand from the Third Quarter Podcast to the New Normal Show hits just a little different, because it feels different as I'm recording this. And again, to the OG 3QPs, thank you so much for your support and your love this year. And for the newbies of the New Normal Show, welcome. All are welcome to stay, but also all are welcome to leave too. And if this episode has blessed you and encouraged you, please feel free to share this to someone you know, like, and love. Share this on your story, share this on your feed. But also follow the podcast, leave a kind review, rate us 5 stars. That helps us get shown to people that need us. So I love you so much. I love you. I love you so much. And thank you for listening to the New Normal Show. See you next episode.